Okay, there we go. So yeah, as I mentioned, really appreciative of everyone being here today for our first TLC talk of the semester. We are joined today by Joe Tamer, who serves as the Deputy Director of NASA's Infiniscope project. And he'll be providing us an overview of the different types of immersive learning experiences created through ASU's Center for Education Through Exploration. So the ETX department. Really excited about today's initiative or today's conversation because he will essentially be giving us a tour of an immersive virtual tour opportunity called Tour It. And you'll have the opportunity today to view some examples of fully adaptive virtual field trips created by this learning design, by his learning design team, as well as virtual tours created by educators and scientists across the country with the help of this openly licensed software. So that's the main point we want to drill down into today's presentation, is that this is openly licensed software, so it is available and accessible to you all. So these digital learning experiences can be viewed with a laptop, a phone, or a VR headset if you have one. And then by the end of today's session, you'll be able to log into Tour and create an account and view some of the tours that he has developed. So very excited about today's presentation. As I mentioned, we'll be here for the full hour. So if you do have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. It looks to me like, Joe, your slides went black.
Oh, they went back. Okay.
Yes.
1
So
second.
we will try to pull those back up and then we'll move to the next slide.
Do you see them now?
I do. Yes. Thank you.
All right.
Dr. Wilson, I can see your face. So can you just confirm that you can see it as well? Thumbs up. Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Wilson. So next slide, Joe, and we'll just
All right.
go through a couple rules of engagement so that everyone's on the same page. So if you do feel comfortable, and if you've been here before, you know that our format for the TLC Talks is essentially just to have a community of practice so that folks can learn from one another. So if you do feel comfortable, please turn on your cameras. We'd love to see your faces so that we know who's in the room and who we're engaging with. If you aren't speaking or if you don't have a question, please mute yourself so that we're not getting the feedback with the audio as we're doing today's presentation. If you do have a question, please feel free to raise your hand, or you can use the chat feature. We'll be monitoring the chat while Joe is doing the presentation, so we will be able to elevate any of your questions to him so that he doesn't miss anything. But then there'll also be opportunities for Q&A at the end of the presentation, so you can also hold your questions there as well. As I mentioned when we first joined in the call, this session is being recorded. So the goal here is to make sure that folks that weren't able to attend, because whether they be teaching or traveling or what have you, have access to the recording and to the presentation. So we will be recording this session and we'll be disseminating it out via email to all of the registrants of today's session. So you'll also get it via email as well. And then on another note, based on that, we will be continuing our conversation on LinkedIn. So if you want to engage with faculty members across the various campuses, join our LinkedIn page and you'll be able to see the recording on there as well by the end of this week. So then you'll be able to, make comments, tell folks how you're using the system or what have you. So look to our LinkedIn page for that and we'll share that information and details with you later in the presentation. Obviously, feedback is really important. So if you would stick around and submit an evaluation just so that we get an understanding of who's in the space, what's important to you to learn, and then how we can continue to enhance the TLC Talks for further presentations. We would definitely appreciate your feedback on that front. And then lastly, I already mentioned we'll be continuing the conversation on LinkedIn. So with that, I will be passing it over to Joe to start us with our presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm just going to reshare so I make sure the sound is there. So there we go. Everybody can see that again? Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Geneva, and I really appreciate the invitation to give one of these talks. It's my honor and privilege to represent a project called Infiniscope. This is a project from NASA's Science Mission Directorate and their Science Activation Network. So for our project, we are dedicated to bringing NASA data and science and scientists into the nation's classroom. In the first 5 years of the project, we are dedicated to middle school and high school. In the last few years, NASA's allowed us to expand into introductory college. And the website is right there. I put it in chat originally. At the end, we'll come back to this. So if you like what we're talking about today, you can sign up for a free account and have access to the tools to create your own immersive experiences. And so the tool that we're going to talk about is called Tour It. And Tour It allows you to create your own virtual tour. And we're bringing it to you under the banner of Infiniscope today because Tour It was jointly funded by the Department of Education as a workforce development tool for school students to develop multimedia skills and the ability to tell their own narratives. In a modern education, different ways to share your story and to provide context. But Infiniscope is more than just virtual tours. I'm going to take you on a journey today through some virtual field trips that my team has created. Half my team here at ASU are former teachers, the other half are technologists, and together we put together some really nice, interactive, adaptive, personalized learning experiences for NASA. But we also make those tools available to US-based educators across the country for you to create your own lessons, which will be our talk in February, and create your own virtual tours or immersive experiences with Tour It, which is the focus of today's talk. So actually, before I do that, this is a short little video that goes over what Infiniscope is. So I'll stop talking and let that play.
And liftoff, Falcon Heavy with Europa Clipper.
Space exploration leads to amazing discoveries that inspire wonder and awe. But how do we translate that into deeper understanding of science and the world around us?
NASA provides really incredible opportunities for educators to inspire their students.
What better way to teach science than through the authentic big questions that come along with NASA science?
There was a time when science education meant listening to a lecture. But for students to truly learn science, they need to participate in science. And that's where the Infiniscope project comes in.
Infiniscope creates cutting-edge educational technology that enables scientists and educators to share NASA science with learners of all ages.
Our team can only do so much alone, so we've developed creator tools that enable scientists and educators to create their own digital learning experiences to meet the needs of their learners and the audiences that they're trying to address.
The Infiniscope tools allow me to create a lesson that's catered to the needs of my students. Lenox is a small inner-city community. 99% of the population is Latino. My latest project with Infiniscope was to create the lesson for the Artemis II mission. The simple author was a huge upgrade from the previous authoring program that we used.
Simple Author is a tool where you can make an interactive digital lesson that changes based off of the way the learner interacts with the lesson. If the learner's really curious about an area, you can add more information and really interesting interactive elements for them to engage with.
You can program different types of questions, add videos. I have a lot of cutscenes from NASA assets, data that NASA provided, and I weaved it into that storyline within that lesson.
If they need a little bit more support, they'll be getting customized feedback that you can write in. So it's like you're right there with the learner the whole way.
The students can really feel like a scientist and feel what it's like to maybe do the calculations that would be necessary to send a spacecraft to the moon.
Challenger centers across the country offer simulated space missions for all learners. The Tour It product that Infiniscope has created allows learners to come in, to see the space, to know what to expect, so that when they get into the simulator, they're excited, they're engaged, and they're comfortable.
Tour It is a browser-based platform that allows you to make immersive virtual field trips.
It's a 360-degree immersive environment that incorporates other projects into it.
Over the last decade, Infiniscope has engaged with over 8,000 educators across the United States in all 50 states. And now we're seeing more and more scientists beginning to engage with these same creator tools.
The tools that Infiniscope has created are taking virtual field trips to a whole new level. We can actually now go to other planetary bodies to explore them. Infiniscope is really addressing a lot of challenges that we have with astrobiology. Astrobiology is the nexus of a lot of different sciences and is quite complex. We have to understand whether something was produced by geology, what kinds of signs we're looking at and how reliable they are. The current learning experience we've been designing is based on morphological structures, and we've designed learning experiences looking at those morphological structures through Earth's geologic record and also on Mars.
This is really just the beginning. Having this partnership with Infiniscope is really such a game changer for our learners.
They get to go places they don't normally have access to.
Geological digs, dream beyond the stars, see things that they don't get to see in their hometowns. It's quite literally the coolest thing that I've ever been a part of.
In the future, anyone will be able to create their own virtual experiences.
We want to reach everyone, not just the top kids. We want to reach everyone so that they understand the process of science.
STEM can be a little bit intimidating. It can be a little bit scary. The unknown can be a little bit scary.
The best way to learn science is to learn by doing. With Infiniscope, we're using education technology to make it easier for any learner anywhere to do just that.
All right. So, as good teaching practice, right? I work at the Center for Education Through Exploration. We're all about active learning online at scale. And so therefore, it's time for you to stop being a passive participant and you get to explore. I'm gonna be, pull out my old middle school teacher. I'm gonna give you 5 minutes and then we're gonna bring everybody back. But we have 2 different virtual tours that you can explore here. And I'll put them both in the, let's see, can I do that and put them in the chat? Give me one moment. Should have had this done earlier. My apologies. Here we go. Chat. There it was. One in the meeting. There you go. So, and I'll go back to share. So, on these 2 different virtual field trips, just to give you a choice of which one you go to, red rocks, why is Mars red? This is a high school chemistry lesson, and you're learning about the process of iron oxidation. We take you to 2 places that have red rocks on Earth, then we take you to Mars and let you analyze rocks and data from the Curiosity mission to see which environment this is closer to. For Dino Doom, you get to explore the extinction event that killed off the dinosaurs. And this was a big mystery in science because not all of the evidence is located in one geologic site around the world. So what we do is we piece together data from different geologic sites and they solve a mystery to try and put the data together like a scientist. Now, these are each 30 to 45-minute lessons, right? But I wanted to give you a taste of them right now. So I'll put a timer on for 5 minutes. Feel free to go and explore each of these yourselves. And then we're going to come back and talk about the benefits and trade-offs. Okay? All right, I'll set a timer now. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. And I heard that people are having a hard time hearing me. Is this any better if I move closer? Someone give me a holler.
Looks like we got a thumbs up. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm gonna pause the recording and then I'll restart it once we engage back in the lesson.
Right, that's your 10-second warning. Finish up your exploratory geology now. And let's come on back. I'd love to hear from you guys. What did you guys see as the benefits of this type of learning? Let's start with the benefits and then maybe we'll talk about the trade-offs second. So feel free to turn on your mics and holler out, be respectful of others. What did we see as some benefits? Any volunteers?
So, Joe, sorry, I have my camera up because having lunch. It's lunch
Please.
down here in the south. Thank you for doing this. I think, kind of goes back to the whole technology is being immersive, right? Immersive essentially means engaging. I think that's the best part. You're learning in an environment that you're not physically present, but it makes you feel as if you are. So you're kind of, I think, consuming content and maybe being able to retain it. And I think maybe the consumption leads to maybe better comprehension, if you will, right? That's what I'm getting, and most of us are kind of familiar with some of this immersive technologies now, even in the space of, let's say, having a VR set, if you will, right? So yeah, I mean, I see a lot of benefits, being able to consume the information, understand, and being able to retain. I think that's where it all comes down to. And again, comes down to content, how actually the content are being prepared, and how easily it is being disseminated, if you will.
Wonderful observations. Anybody else have thoughts they'd like to share from their experience? Come on, you guys are educators. You like people speaking out in class. Paul?
So, yes, I put in the chat, this is a good opportunity, especially for those K to 12 students, to give them an equitable learning opportunity. Some of them would never have opportunity to visit these archaeological sites where dino remains can be found, but here they can travel and find out what it's all about and maybe get intrigued by that career.
Great. Absolutely. Yes. It's more accessible, more engaging. Any trade-offs that you guys would like to note from having students learn like this? Any concerns you might have about using virtual field trips?
Only thing I would say, maybe the human engagement, right? If you're learning from a teacher, and then you're learning from this, I don't know, maybe the human element is the missing piece, if you will. But it could be hybrid, right? Learning could be hybrid these days. It could be a guided, faculty guided virtual tour, if you will. So
Agreed.
yeah.
I have these conversations all the time with faculty. Well, nothing replaces the in-person field trip. I completely agree, right? If you can get students out into a place and hands-on and seeing with their own eyes and feeling with their own fingers, and that's wonderful. But do the students have the time? Does your educational system have the funding to get them there? If you can go in person, great. If you can't, these are alternatives, right? That increase accessibility. So just to kind of move along, because I want to show you the educator created tours. We call these virtual field trips, and they are freely available for educators. Your tax money through NASA and Department of Education, NSF, that have paid for these. It really helps with place-based education, where if the best place to learn a concept is in a certain place, I can teach it in that place and I can bring the students there virtually. I can have experts in the field, the world's experts can talk about these concepts. And as you said, it's available to everybody. The flip side is the virtual field trips I just showed you cost over $100,000 to build a single one of them, right? We're going to Australia, we're going to Arizona, we're getting Mars data. They take months to build, and there's one perspective, and you as the educator are using it off the shelf. You don't have the ability to update that, right? So there's only one perspective offered. And we've been building these for a long time, and in 2019, we were working with Kamehameha schools in Hawaii, and they asked, this is great to have you build them for us and with us, but could you teach us how to do this? And then the pandemic came along, and we challenged ourselves to say, can we make a freely available tool that gives you most of the ability to build something like this? And we came up with Tourit. And Tourit is designed for smaller scale efforts. You can build something in hours instead of months. Anybody can build one of these with a cell phone and a small little $250 Theta camera. There's other options for that. And this is what Tourit looks like. You title your tour, you drag in panoramic photos, 360 sphericals, you name them. They become the nodes of the different locations in your virtual tour. You can drop these hotspots around that can have information or websites or just simple text, a PDF, a video, an image, and you can create your own virtual tour with context. You can put captions for the information for each picture. You can use YouTube or Vimeo or host the videos on your own server. And it's this easy to publish. You go up to hit the publish button and you are the author of your own creation. It's a web page link so that it's accessible on a student's phone, on their laptop or desktop, or even in a VR headset. And we call it Tourit. There's a number of essential skill-based tools we created for the Department of Ed. Chart It, Plan It. This was Tourit for creating your own virtual tour. It was the tool that was most popular with the students and the faculty. And it allowed us to put the camera and the narrative in the hands of educators. And what's really neat is these immersive experiences we call tours instead of virtual field trips. They're simpler, but because we're decentralizing, who can publish, you see all sorts of creative ways to use this. I'm just going to say one thing. Both NASA and Department of Ed have said any educator can use this, provided it's for non-profit, non-commercial means. So as an educator, creating a lesson or experience for your students, and you can share it out, you just can't make a profit for it commercially. So let's take a look at two different virtual tours. I'll put these again in the chat. One moment. One is of a wind tunnel facility at the University of New Hampshire. And let's see, there's my chat. Everyone in the meeting. Wind tunnel facility. And the other one is of a native Hawaiian fish pond in Hawaii that was built by students for seniors as a capstone project. And this really gets into the native Hawaiian and cultural references and knowledge you can share. So I'll set the timer for 5 minutes and take a look, follow and see what some of your fellow educators are able to create And these were all created in less than 20 hours of work. They're really nice virtual tours, but they're not at the level of the virtual field trip. Take a look and experience for yourself. It's immersive, just like the others. You can click on.
Hi, my name is Terry Onke. I'm an assistant.
Meet the people who are there. You can go inside the facility. Click on images. Captions underneath. Videos, and you can actually put the narration and closed caption underneath so people can see even with headphones or when they're not listening. Go further on down the wind tunnel, and they're using NASA data to show how methane leaks can be observed from satellites.
Joe, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
I was actually trying to be a little quiet because.
Oh, I see. Sorry. Okay, gotcha.
Somebody didn't want to try, I would show them. And you've got text, you can have websites. And so this was created by 2 faculty members, one at University of New Hampshire and one at Community College of Rhode Island. Okay, 1 minute remaining. All right, if we have everybody come on back, that would be great. I'm wondering what people noticed as the differences between these virtual tours created by educators and the virtual field trips you saw earlier. Anybody want to shout out or put something in the chat?
Would it be fair to say these tours have more data points?
Sometimes it depends on what the person wants, but they could have more hotspots in there. Yep.
Okay.
Other observations. Everybody's quiet, probably eating lunch. All right, so when we think of the dichotomy between virtual field trips, the virtual field trips have long been created by professional design teams with the larger budgets from a grant, right? But the virtual tours can be created by anybody with just a few hours of professional development training. The virtual field trips, as a distinguishing factor, we integrate them with a intelligent tutoring system. so that they can get live feedback about what they're doing in that environment. And there are assessment questions built into that immersive experience. So you are, asked about what you're learning right in the experience. Whereas in the virtual tours, we keep it simple and it's interactive and it's exploratory, but you don't get that intelligent tutoring system. There's a way, if you're more advanced, you can drop a virtual tour into the intelligent tutoring system, but that's for future lessons. The assessment would be the assessment questions would be separate with a virtual tour. You can do those in Canvas or old-fashioned paper and pen. But the big difference here is the virtual field trips used to require months to produce. Higher quality, higher resolution, but do you need all that? No. You can create your own virtual tour in a number of hours or days, depending on what you want to put in it. So what I thought I'd do is let you talk or listen to a few of the faculty that have created virtual tours, and then I'll show you how you can get an account and we can do questions. So this is Terry Owemke, who created the virtual tour of the Physics Flow facility.
Tour empowers me to tell my own narrative about my research because it is me creating the story that I'm providing to others. So it really gives me as the scientist the ability to create exactly the message that I want other people to see. I would describe the process for learning to write as very easy and very intuitive. When you start to put together a tour, it's very easy to kind of get some pictures in, even if they're not 360 images, you can get those in and kind of use them as placeholders, see how Tour works, preview your tour, and then go back through and edit. As an early career scientist, it's really great for me to have these science communication tools at my disposal. It's really good for me to have had that practice and to have had that training. So I have had the opportunity to get my tour evaluated from a Scope Seed grant, where we were able to collect data about in-person tours, tours that were based on a laptop versus tours that use the VR platform. And we were able to see that even though we were getting improvement in students' pre and post surveys of different concepts that we talked about in the in-person tour, for the laptop tour and for the VR tour, they were getting at least the same level of engagement. Tour.
And for those of you who did the fish ponds, here are some of our educators who collaborated on that project.
The value and the power of our teachers building these types of virtual tours is empowering them to tell our own stories from our own perspectives. There's so many people that, think Hawaii is a little vacation spot, but they're surprised to hear that, we had electricity in both of our palaces before the White House did, and that we were advanced in so many ways. And what these virtual tours do is they allow our teachers and our students to tell our own stories, to guide our own narratives, and to kind of combat what the stereotypes are, but really to also dive into the technology of today and utilize it in their classrooms to empower their students to also continue telling their stories, and understanding sometimes keeping silent, other people will fill in the narrative. But if we tell our own stories, that's where the power lies and the beauty.
And this is Koa. And one thing I'll point out, if you heard about the Hawaiian wildfires last year, we captured this footage with Lahaina in the background about a month before everything burned.
It's important for Indigenous peoples, for peoples of that place, to be able to share their story, because when others come in and not necessarily are from the place, and the perspective is differently, it's not that person, it's not the people of that place being able to tell that story, it's somebody else, and then that's just different. It's not it's not necessarily encompassing of all of the values within that culture and within that community. And so yeah, I think that's absolutely what needs to happen, is that people should especially those people of that place, indigenous people, should be able to tell their own story and not have others tell their story for them.
And finally, the last one, Tony, she is the one who created the Fish Pond virtual tour with her students.
I think it's most important for any Native and Indigenous group to be able to tell their own stories, because in the past, our stories were always told from not our point of view, typically the colonist point of view. And so being able to get on something like Tourit, which allows us to not just tell our story, but to tell our story with visual pieces in the ways that we want to and the ways that we choose, is most important, because it allows us to tell the story from our perspective and from our truth.
All right. So that brings us to the end. And oh, good. Geneva, we said we'd be done about quarter of, so here we are. So you do need an account to access Tourit. You get to that through infiniscope.org, and you go in on the upper right, you click on create an account, and I have somebody from our team kind of standing by. Typically, these are approved within 1 business day, but NASA and Department of Ed have us make sure that you are a US based or US friendly educator. And so once you're signed up, then, and you're signed in, you can click on this little waffle up here and you'll get access to the creative tools. Today, we talked about Tourit for creating your own virtual tour. And in February, we'll talk about how to create your own adaptive lesson with our intelligent tutoring system. Both come free as creative tools with your Infiniscope account. You can drop the account anytime you want. There's no cost ever. But we do make sure that you're a US-based educator and that you're not using it for commercial purposes. With that said, Geneva, are we here on this slide, or do we take questions first or after you tell me?
Yeah, lovely. If you want to go back to the last slide so that folks can see the Infiniscope site, and drop that in the chat so that they can register if they'd like during this call. Also, as I mentioned earlier, this will be recorded, so you'll have the tutorial of how to log in and access Infiniscope after this presentation, so you don't have to rush to create an account today if you're not in a position to do so. But yeah, so Joe just dropped the website in the chat for you to create an account. And I also want to stress, and I think Joe mentioned it in some ways, but this is an opportunity beyond just STEM faculty, right? So you have the capacity to create a tour for anything that as it relates to your realm as a faculty member. So I could see this being, a value add for, if I'm looking at Dr. Wilson and you are a religion teacher. So if you want to take them to, because I'm going to pick on you because you're one of my favorite faculty, but if you want to take them to a religious facility that they may not have traditionally had access to, you could do a tour there and then do some, hotspots about some iconography that may be important. Or if you work in the arts and you want to take them, take your students to a museum that may not be localized to your campus, you have an opportunity to do that as well. So the world is definitely your oyster when you were thinking about how to bring in some VR and adaptive learning in unique and interesting ways for our students so that they really get, to Mohammed's point, that immersive experience that they may not necessarily have access to if they weren't, coming to your campus full time, or being able to, have a global perspective and get around the country or around the world to some of these really interesting locations or facilities. So I just wanted to drill down on that a bit more, because even though we've, talked a bit about the STEM realm here, just for virtue of, Joe's relationship with NASA, there's definitely capacity for this tool to be used in very unique and different ways as it relates to your teaching and learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we started this with the Department of Ed, it was for all subjects.
Yeah.
And then that grant ended. NASA has picked it up, and I'm funded to give professional development about STEM using it. But the tool can be used for anything that's educational and non-commercial, nonprofit.
So with the 10 minutes that we have left, we do have some time for questions. So if you want to come off mute and ask some questions, feel free to do so, or you can put it in the chat. And then I also wanted to elevate that we have put the evaluation in the chat as well. So if you would like to just share your feedback about today's presentation, what you thought of it, if it's useful or valuable to your, your teaching and learning, we'd love to hear that. And then I also want to, Joe, if you can move to the next slide. I wanted to share some ways to get in touch with us. So obviously we talked about the evaluation, and you can get in touch with our Teaching and Learning Center team via the emails that you see below. And then you also have the QR code on the screen to access our LinkedIn page so that we can continue the conversation there later this week and into the next coming weeks. And then lastly, I wanted to plug our next session. So on February 18th, same time, same place on Zoom, we will be having session number 2 from Joe as it relates to Tour Us. So a different modality of adaptive learning that he mentioned in the beginning of the presentation. He'll be doing a deeper dive on the Tour Us adaptive framework that you are also able to adopt and use for your teaching and learning. So just wanted to share that. And you'll also, I mean, if you're on the email list for today's session, you'll also get the email about next month's session as well. So we hope that you join us then as well.
It'll be a totally different presentation. The only thing will be the opening video. I got to get the Infiniscope general video out there, but everything else will be different. And if you have an account by then, you can hop in and follow along.
So I
Mohammed has a question.
from
Yes,
Mohammed.
Mohammed.
Joe, so this was great, actually. Thank you. So I'm already seeing multiple use cases, right? I mean, of course, you mentioned in creating learning content. And so I think a couple of questions I have is, first thing, the content itself, right? Where does the data reside and who has access to it, and whether we have access to content created by other faculty from other, institutions.
Great questions. So we host the virtual tours on our server here at ASU, and that's because we get funding from different grants: NSF, NASA, Gates Foundation, Department of Ed, and we put them all on our repository here. If it is a Earth or space science lesson or virtual tour, and you want to share it out with the Infiniscope community, we vet it, and if it's good, we pop it on the Infiniscope website under the contributed content. If it's not Earth science, and you wanted to share it out, well, you can share the link with anybody you want to. That's your link. You're the author. You're the creator. You can share the link out wherever you want. You can post the link anywhere you want. And we could share it on our alternate site, vft.asu.edu, which has some virtual field trips which are not NASA or STEM related. And I'll put it in the chat as well, vft.asu.edu. Did I answer all your questions, Mohammed, or did I miss one?
No, I think it does. Yeah, but of course, I'm gonna dive into it to explore a little more. But again, just I think as long as faculty creating a course, for example, or content, they own the basically the ownership, if you will, right? So, or they retain the ownership, and then as long as they can share, I'm sure they can, they will share on their LMS, whatever the LMS they're using in their courses. So my second question, I know you said nonprofit. What if I were to create, for example, a virtual tour of our campus and want to share for prospective student? Is that allowable?
That is completely allowable, and I would say, I think that is a brilliant way to use it. We have done some virtual tours here of our science labs, and we showcase those with prospective students. If you are a nonprofit school, which most are, that is perfectly acceptable.
Awesome. That would be great. And then going back to Geneva's point, so we have a museum on campus where we actually do quite a bit of shows throughout the academic year. And it has always been one of my goals to really put the museum, the exhibitions that we do virtual. Right now, we're trying few things, but it just really cost extensive, if you will, and also very time consuming. But something like this looks like could be done very quickly at a at no cost, I guess, beside your time. So I am looking forward to that as well, to do work with the department, our department, and the museum on campus to maybe showcase some of these exhibitions we do on campus, and basically reach out to more folks.
We've done a few with museums and observatories, and initially, some of the museum people we worked with were like, "Ooh, does this mean people will do the virtual tour of the museum and not come in person?" And actually, the opposite is true. Like they'll do a preview and get excited and say, "Oh, I want to see more." And it
Right.
depends on the narrative you put, right? The ones I've seen that have done really well are they're giving you a glimpse and inviting you to, come see more. It's a try before you buy type deal. And it generates excitement and can be part of the social media that you do for an exhibit at a museum.
Awesome.
Another Discovery Center did it as a training thing for teachers and students of what to expect before you get here, so they could get rid of the first half hour orientation of where things are and whatnot. Go ahead.
Great, great. No, I'm definitely looking forward to explore and use it. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, Geneva, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so we'll stick around for about the next 5 minutes, just in case folks have some lingering questions that you weren't, that you didn't address in the first 55 minutes. But yeah, as always, we appreciate you for being here. We appreciate you for committing your time to, enhancing your teaching practice and learning and development. If you have any questions for the team, feel free to reach out to us. And if not, hopefully we'll see you next month for the next TLC Talk.